Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Pino Trugo from San Francisco State University again. And this is the CUBE project for the Introduction to Drawing class. And this is part 3, in which we'll try to figure out how the inside of this cube gets constructed. And I just want to say also, this will be half of it because there's already a video on YouTube that will be, I'll probably retitle part 3A. But anyway, this is the process. So just very quickly again, I'm going to say what we did so far in part 1, which was that we did this sketch of various possibilities of sectioning the face of a cube. Then we picked one. And once we picked that, we did a couple of operations. We did a mirror image of the design onto the right, and then we took that whole pair and we flipped it. And you can see you get the same thing, except flipped. And that's our pattern. So in part 2, and this is very important that you keep this, okay? So what you might want to do at some point is mark it and say, you know, Pino's, I don't know, storyboard or something. Because it's important that you remember which was the original section, even though technically they're all the same, but they're in different orientations. So that's very important. So we simply did a drawing for part 2, which is just a straight-on shot of the cube in its full size. Okay, 1:1, 4 inches by 4 inches. Drawing light lines first, using tools, and then darker lines for the actual objects. Just mark the letters that belong to your section. And then that's essentially the copy of your sketch on the right, okay? Everything is 1 inch apart, going across, I think it's 1.5 inch from the title block, and whatever is left on the top, okay? So this was the easy part because I could just repeat this 4 times. Well, I will, to make the cube, and then 2 more squares, and I can build the outside of the cube, right? I'm going to cut that. But the tricky part is how to do the inside. So we're going to figure out how to do those triangles, the exact dimensions, okay? And since you're all at home, and since I'm not sure if you have a printer or not, there's several ways that you can do this part. Oh, by the way, this drawing final will look like this. So again, this is part 3. And this drawing is actually right now extra credit, meaning you don't really need to draw it if you have the other bits of information that you can perhaps print. If you can't print at all anything, you have to make this. Otherwise, you have no way of knowing how big the pieces are. But if you can print what you'll have, you could print this, although you'll see in a moment why these are actually a little more complicated than I think I mentioned it in the introduction. One of my students at some point named Slate, it's named after him, came up with this idea of doing all the possible lines kind of from the get-go. And I'll explain in a moment. So if you're at home and you have a printer, yeah, I think it's next assignment. So I think this is 11x, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 11x. So 12, under 12, you'll have this, and it will be already split into letter size, okay? So you can actually print it at home if you have a regular printer. And these parts will be like on the same page, okay? So you can actually print it. And this will be blank, meaning the pattern won't be drawn. So I recommend, of course, if you have a printer, the main thing though is that you have to absolutely make sure that it is correct when you print it. because printers are funny. So you have to measure and say, let's take one that's even. So from D to Z is 3 inches. So you have to check that from D to the center is 3 inches, because if it's not, you're in trouble, unless of course you print something off for every single drawing and then they're all the same, but that's weird. So don't do it. So if you don't have the printer, well, actually I mentioned I could even mail this to some people if they wanted it, but that's a little complicated. So let's hope you have a printer. If you don't have a printer, you have to do this drawing, even though it's extra credit. Otherwise, you won't be able to do the rest. So what is this drawing? This drawing is basically 2 sections of the cube that allows us to figure out how long these lines are, how long these pieces are from any of these points, any point on the face, because everybody has different designs. And if you recall, there are not that many: A, B, C, D, E, and X. So there's really 6 points which get kind of repeated. So once we find those 6 points, that will cover everybody's in the class, everybody's design, and definitely will cover yours. You might need just 3 points. So what we did, let's just imagine we don't know what this thing looks like inside, right? So how would we find out how big it is? Well, let me just say one thing though. I know what the parts on the outside are, right? That's one line. I know how big that is. I can just take it, right? Let's take this one. But I don't know these guys. However, if I did, if you have 3 pieces of information on the 3 sides, that's the only possible triangle that you can make. So that's our goal, to figure out, to find all the lines so that we can have a complete kit of parts. Because if you have to find 3 different lengths, yeah, just slightly different. No, they're not. They're almost the same. Oh, actually, there you go. Yeah, these are all different. So in other words, let's assume one line is outside. Let's assume it's this one. Okay. So let's assume that that's B, my point B right here. Okay. And I have to figure out, of course, what it is. But let's assume that this is X. It's a little bit longer. Actually, that's the longest right here. Well, I'm not sure. Whatever, whichever it is. Let's say that's B. Let's say this is X, and let's say this is C. Oh, actually, I take it back. Never mind. I'm just trying to do one thing at a time here. So BX and then to the center. So let's say that's B. And let's say this is X and then the center. In other words, I think that's what I'm trying to say. So in other words, if I know that this is from here to here, it's BX, and then this is B to Z, and C to Z, there's only one possible triangle. I mean, it could be flipped this way, but no matter how I move these around, it's always going to be the same triangle, right? There's no options. So that's our goal, to get all these possible lines down, and this is what that drawing does. If you look at your cube, or let's say that's my cube, okay? So as it happens in that design, I only have I want to find out all the points that go across my middle. Let's see. If you recall, at some point we did a little sketch where we put all the letters. Okay, and we said that's A, and then going out, it was B, C. And then this, we called it X because it was an oddball that we added later. And then we went D and E, okay? And then here it's the same. And C, D, D, E, okay. So lots of letters, but it's really just 6. So these guys, all the letters there, so basically A, B, and C, what I can find, I find them, I cut the cube this way, okay? And then I look. And of course, when you cut a cube this way, it looks just like the face. But let's, for a moment, forget about that so we don't get confused. And once I do that, my points that were on the face of the cube, and I connect them, that's these 3 lines, okay? So in my drawing, it's these 3. So this is this view of a cube that's been cut in half this way, okay? Now, what are we missing? We're missing D and E and X, right? And earlier I had another method to find X, but now we'll see that actually we can find all those 3 if we cut our cube this way. Sorry, this doesn't look like a cube. There we go. If I cut my cube this way, all the points that are on the edge here, I can find them by cutting the cube along the diagonal, which is this one, okay? So in other words, I still need to figure out what, what D and E and X. But now notice that X is also, if I cut the cube this way, it's this spot right here. So in short, if I slice my cube in the diagonal and then I look, I have several ways to look at it, but X is going to be there, E is going to be there, and D is going to be there. In other words, those are the lengths that I need. And that's what TIS is. Okay, so let's say that's like this. So I now forget that this was a section, imagine that this is a whole cube. So I cut the cube this way, actually like this. Okay, I cut the cube and then I look, and now this is just turned, but it's the same thing. And then you have to make sure that this is 4 inches, right? The width or the length is whatever that diagonal is, okay? So this process gives us now all the information that we need. And if you notice, I drew a couple of little, in 3D, in isometric, I drew, oh, I realized, oh yeah, that's right. I didn't darken C because we already had C from that section. Okay, so I'm gonna do that now because, again, if you don't have a printer, you wouldn't be able to get this information, which is information that then we're gonna use the concept compass to build your cube. And what I was saying earlier was that in the beginning of this project, I actually gave that information to students, but there was too much stuff here. So in theory, you have the same thing, and this is done on the computer, so it's perfect. But now what we'll do is we'll repeat this by drawing it, and then we'll do another step with the circles where we show that it's even easier, okay? And sometimes it's not good that it's so easy because it's, then you learn less, but all right, so I am going to draw this drawing. It's at an angle here, and then it's straight, so I'll just bring it back and forth. But before I start, I'll show you another way that you could think of that problem. At some point, I showed my students that yeah. Okay, so if you recall, these are my points, A, B, and C. And I said, okay, well, if I cut that, and then I look inside, These are my dimensions. So that's one section, okay, for all those points in this position. Any point like that. And then the next one was going to be the diagonal. So that would be any point that is here. If I cut it this way, right, and then I open it, and I get them there. And then later I realized that there was even an extra point, which was my Z, which for a while I did a special section to just find that, meaning it's there. And I said, oh, okay, if I cut this way, it's still going through the center, then I get it. And then later I realized, well, wait a minute, that's happening already here. So we don't need that anymore. Okay, I'll put this away. I hope I didn't leave clay on the paper. And again, I'm going to put another sheet of paper of the good stuff, okay? And the good stuff makes a good sound, just like the bread in Ratatouille. I remember Ratatouille, but I never remember the cook, the girl. Okay, so I'm just gonna tape that. I'm gonna use again my T-square here to get a square. Okay, a few seconds. It's important that this be taped down because, yeah, just because it's everything here is to be precise. And I will show again how to do the border, just because it's important. Some students have asked me, why can't we just pre-print these? And it's true, you know, in Draftsman studios, they used to have pre-printed stuff, but now, of course, nobody draws by hand anymore. But if we did that, we could do everything on the computer, right? So it's not a big deal to just draw real quick. Okay, again, 1/2 inch. And I'll go fast now. I'll see if I can beat the YouTube setting. Because this, of course, you might have already seen, and it's just a little extra, but so don't do this at home, meaning don't rush, okay? Because there's no, it won't be good. But I'm rushing a little bit here because I don't want to lose you. Well, I do need these borders to know where I'm gonna go. Actually, I prefer the dark one for the video. Again, I'm using HB, very soft. I don't like it, but just so you can see, okay? So real quick, I'm gonna copy how far this is. Well, it's definitely centered, okay? So whatever the center is, and then I left 1/2 inch there, okay? Which gives me barely any room. Oh, and I left 1/2 inch on the other side, okay? So it's at 45. What did we say? Yes, 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna measure 1/2 inch on the left, and actually I need the 45 triangle. Let's draw a line. It's gonna be a little messy now, but I should be careful because actually, again, if I didn't have a printer, if you don't have a printer, this is the drawing that you're going to use to then build your cube, right? So, okay, let's say 3.5. So the center is here. I think. Sometimes what I do is I draw on the ruler and I measure again. Yeah. Whenever you do something, you should draw a few lines that give you the sort of the structure for the whole drawing eventually. So I know my square is going to be there, and I know that at 45 degrees I can build a square just like that. And I can just draw the corner there at an angle, the corner here. And before I do the vertical, I measure 4 inches. So it's basically a square on its corner, right? Balanced on its corner. So as long as I do 4 inches there, I'll be good. By drawing a vertical now, I get the bottom corner. Actually, I'm using my little pinky, my little finger, to kind of give me a little rest there. I don't know why am I doing that. Oh yeah, less friction maybe. I'm gonna just check. Yeah, that's 4 inches. So that's good. Moving right along. And again, if I didn't have a T-square, I would just pick something, right? So in this case, I'm picking my vertical right here. I'm setting my triangle, and then I move my fingers so I can slide it, but then I lock it, and then I draw. Okay. 1/2 inch for the, so these could be anywhere really, right? The other part could be anywhere, this bit, right? But there's not much room, so it just barely fits. So we're gonna say it's 1/2 inch from the edge there. And again, let's assume I didn't have my T-square, so I would set it up. Of course, if you have one, now the T-square is cool, but sometimes it might tip like this, right? So you have to be careful, make sure it doesn't move. With triangles, since every time you have to reset. Oops. So these are projection lines, okay? I'm projecting these corners over to, well, infinity really, and beyond. And now the most important part is that I draw these only 4 inches because, again, I'm cutting it this way and then I'm looking, but I have to make sure that this is 4 inches. So from here to here. And that gives us the big block. So again, don't erase any lines if you can. Just leave this nice. And now I'm going to just check to see, because I'm doing it fast. Yeah, I'm slightly off there, just a tiny bit. Yeah, tiny bit. And this, I don't care what it is. It is what it is, right? So, because I'm a little lazy now, I'm just going to measure 4 inches on the section on the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, because those are hard to construct. Otherwise, I have to draw the diagonals. Here, I'll show you how you can do the grid really fast. Actually, you can just keep doing diagonals like that. Then you do one more here. So these are diagonals, right? Because the cube is at an angle. And see, and now I find my my spots there. And this should be really light because I don't really need this grid here, right? It's just to, and now I'm just going to darken it. So this, it's doing double duty, okay? So right now, after I draw this, I'm looking at the cube that I'm cutting in half in order to get this section. But I'm also looking at the section of the same cube, but cut a different way, okay? So I'm just saving space by doing, and I know I'm gonna need that, so I'm just gonna darken this as well. And let's see. Okay. There we go. Oh yes, here I need to do this divisions. And now this diagonal is whatever it is, so I'm just gonna move the triangle to get it. And you'll see actually that I just realized I didn't need to, because in fact I can project these points, and I would get, but yeah, I don't really need this grid in this, but it just looks nice. So these are the lines that we need. We need these 3 lines here. Again, C repeats because it's the same distance. It's the same distance here and there. So A, B, C, D, E, and X, and then I'm going to quickly draw those two little diagrams there. Okay, so, oh, but we need to indicate that we cut this cube in half, and we do that by doing long lines and short lines like that. And then we show little arrows that indicate which way I'm looking. Okay, so I'm looking from the right after I cut it. And I'm not doing a good job here making the right in the same spot, but okay. The interesting thing, of course, about computers is that all these process is just not there. I mean, you know, when you cut something, it just cuts it, but there's no projection lines, there's nothing, so you don't see the real process of what it's doing. And then we would name this. We would say A, and then here we would write eventually section A, section AA. Oops, did I do B? Maybe that's B. No, AA. Okay, I didn't mark this one. This is also another section, but yeah, okay. So I'm just going to draw these lines, and then we're done pretty much. C, B, and A, and X, E, and D. Sorry, was that in the camera? Again, A, B, C, D, E, and X. Which correspond to these 3D views of them, right? This corresponds to this corresponds to that. Isometric views. Might as well use the T-square, I have it. Since I have to do freehand, well, not freehand, but whenever you can, use tools. So here, it's good to use tools. Excuse me. Okay, so C, D, E. It's a funny thing, if you do two lines to fit the letters in, it always look good, even if you do them afterwards. Let's see, D, E, and X. A, B, and C. And the center we're calling Z. I don't know why, just called it Z. Okay. Well, might as well draw those little guys because they look cool. And if you're going to do it, even if it's extra credit, if you're going to do it, might as well do the whole thing. Here, have a little cloth handy so you can clean your tools. And maybe a piece of scrap to even sharpen it a little bit better. I have to get a couple of dimensions here. Let's see, it's 1/2 inch and 3/8, 3/8, and 1/2 inch. So 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/8, 3/8. Inch. Now this is, not exactly necessary. It's just more, showing what it is. Maybe even showing off a little bit. I don't know. But I want to do it because they really explain what the drawing is. And how big is this? This, I bet you it's half of that, right? No, it's actually not. Yeah, because it wouldn't fit. So it's 1 inch. Oh, it is 1/4 inch. Okay, so it's 1 inch by, it looks 1 3/4. And the way to do it really is to do this part first. Because well, why? Actually, oh yeah. I don't know. I had to make a custom scale for this, so I can't quite remember. Oh no, it is 1 inch, right? Of course, that's 1 inch, and this is 1 inch because it's isometric, which means I can use a 30-60 triangle, this triangle, and build it like this. And then I can simply measure 1 inch. Right there. And once I get that, now I can do everything else because everything sort of repeats. So this is an isometric view of that section on the right. Just to give us a sense, right? I did a grid on top and then these lines. So here, the same thing we did here with the 45, we can do here with the 30 in terms of the grid. You can see how I can just use crossings to do everything I need, like if basically drawing a grid now on top of this cube. For the center here, I'm just gonna quick line like that. And I need to draw again D, E, and X and just mark C just to show that it's there, but Again, I can use, oh yeah, this happens to also match. So I get this other spot. And now I'm just going to do those lines. That's D, this is, no, that's E, this is D, and this is X right there. So Z, yeah, that was sloppy. Except we're running out of room, so E, D, and if you just bear with me, because as soon as I finish this, then I'll show how to then use this to build a cube. So this one is a little, I can just project from the bottom now to build the one on top. See, that's what I meant earlier in the videos, the other videos about, you know, not drawing, not measuring rather. Definitely do not draw this fast when you do it, okay? Just trying to get past this part, which is really just illustration. And this was gonna be a 1/2 inch. Like, I'm correct, yeah. Does it fit? Yeah. Okay, so, but you can see you can do a lot without ever have to measure. It's nice too that the little triangle here does help. Very nimb, is that a word? Nimble. Nimble probably is a word. Okay, so that's my other section. And I'm just going to quickly show that it goes there. See how I'm finding all the spots? And these are the 3. That was B. This is C. This is A. Okay. That's the drawing. You know, add your information there. And once again, what we just drew was this cube cut and then looked at from the side. And then another cube cut and look at it, cut this way and look at it from the top. Okay, I'm gonna do now another little bit to see how you would build from this your design, okay? And then I'll stop because there's the other video that shows kind of more in detail. I'm going to, actually I'm gonna leave it. So normally what we would do is we would take see if I can find the previous drawing. Yeah. Now we have all the information. We have all the information on the outside here, these 3 lines, and we have any of the lines that we need, which we need C, B, X, and C again. So we will be using this line for C. We'll be using this line for B, going to the center, X, and then C repeats again, so it's again that length, okay? So let me show you how normally we would do if you had the printout that basically was this, or now if you didn't have, again, a printer to do it. I'm gonna do yet another piece of paper. And this is actually now would be the next assignment, which would be the part the part that would become now your master to build your cube, like completely. Okay, this is actually the next assignment, but and once again, if you had this template, you could build it here, but I'll show you now how to get what's the process, right? So normally in these, if you can print it, you would redraw your cube here, the section, and then you build the inside over this. And then once you did that, you would then transfer this shape with a push pin over to the other side. And this is shown in detail in the next video, okay? I mean, in the one that I've already recorded. Then you would make this is your master drawing, but it's a little flimsy to use because it will break. So what you want to do is transfer that design to a better piece of paper, which then becomes your master. And from that, you build your cube, okay? So how do we go? What I want to show now is how we go from this idea of how to build the triangles from this system, and how this is basically the same, except it's simplified because some of the circles are already drawn, okay? So just bear with me and I will. Here it is. All right, so I'm now gonna I'm gonna pretend again, I don't have a printer, so I have to do it from scratch. So what would I do? We said again that if you have 3 lines, you can build a triangle out of those 3 lines. So for us, from C to B is the first line, and then C to Z and B to Z is the next line, right? And if we look at the cube, we're trying to find this line and that line. Never mind that this later gets connected, but this is the first triangle, then that's the second triangle, and this is the second triangle. So by combining these lines on the outside with the lines on the inside, which we now have, we build a series of triangles, okay? So I'm gonna build 3 triangles, okay? And again, I'm gonna do it, you know, before, we should say before Slate and after Slate. Slate being the student that said, oh, why don't we just draw this? Okay, my compass is almost ready. I have to sharpen it a little bit. Remember how to sharpen it? You want to do a scalpel like this. And again, I'm using soft lead. I'm using HB, but you want to use 2H if you can, just for the video. So I'll be moving things around a little bit here, but I'll start with this. You can draw it anywhere. But I know the shape eventually is going to be kind of like a fan, okay? Something like that. So I'm going to be maybe out here. And the first thing I do is I draw a line, okay? And then I say, okay, well, how big is this line? I just take the compass and I grab it like this. All right. And I transfer it here. Now notice that I'm going to be lost so let me just do that. And I draw it, and that's my first line, and I immediately mark it. Okay, I mark C and I mark B. Now I need to go to the center. So for that, I go to my section, okay? And I look for C and B, and I grab those 2. Okay, so that's C. And I go on C, and I do a circle. Okay, now I do the same for B. I grab it from here, and just make sure it's correct. There. Okay, that's Z. And that's my first point, which now I can connect. And I can darken it. You do have to be precise here because this is going to be the master to build your cube. So what I just did was I just solved this line from here to the center of the cube, which is my Z, by just simply building a triangle. Again, there's no other possible triangle with those 3 lines. Now I just keep going. So now I go I just keep going like this, right? On the outside here and finding those lines. So let's quickly do that. The next line is X. So X is here and it goes C, B, and then B to X. So I'm gonna go to from B, right? I just now need to continue. Basically, I just did this line right here, this line. Okay, now I need to do the next one, but it's all gonna be flat. So it's all gonna be on this piece of paper. So the next one is X, and I'm just gonna measure it. First on the outside here, which happens to be the same as from C to B, because if you look at it, it's just it's just turned, right? It's the same line, it's just turned. In fact, it's turned 90 degrees. Anyway, I bring it over here. That's my X somewhere, right? Somewhere here it's X. And then I go to the section and I grab X from the section. And now I point in Z because I've already done that part. And that's my next step. So that's X. And I can finish that one. And you'll see this will be a little easier when we do the other system, but I want you to understand that this is what is happening. And the last one is going to be from X to C, which is just a diagonal from 1 inch right here. Okay, grab that, bring it over. So that's C again. And C is C, which was already, sorry. Yeah, we had already grabbed it from there. And we do it again. Now I point here. And now I have that last triangle. Now, I won't be able to know for sure until I cut this out. Well, actually, I'm not going to cut this out. In fact, make a note. Don't cut this drawing because then you lose your master, right? This is what I call your cookie cutter. So just put your name, call it master, and then make yourself a master. Now with the pin, we'll transfer this onto another one. So that's it. So in theory, if I did everything right, these 3 triangles are like these three, 1, 2, and 3. Again, this will be combined later, but this now just repeats. What changes might be the scoring and everything, but it's this. The cube is now solved as long as it's right. So, but notice what's happening, okay? And here's where the circle comes into play. Basically, I went through these steps, right? Back and forth. If you recall, I was talking about how if you put a cube into a sphere, okay, you have, actually that's more like that, yeah. You might have these points of the cube that actually touch on the sphere, on the outside, right? Perfect, and they all touch exactly right. So each one of these is like a circle, you know, that's going around the center. And if you can imagine that, you know, this is a cube only on the outside, oops. But then these other points that are smaller might be a little bit closer, right? So in essence, we're drawing the drawings, oops, this is coming apart. All these lines that we're drawing here right? These are basically all the radiuses going to the center of particular points, okay? And now I'll show you why this student was pretty clever. Instead of doing this, what he realized was that he was always going back to Z, right? So what he said was, well, why don't we just draw all the circles? Let's extend this. So these distances, what if I just do this? Notice how this is the same point, right? And what about B? Now, in this particular design, it doesn't have D or E, so it's, you know, it's only the smaller circles. So this would be B. And that's what he did. So he said, well, okay, and this is X. So essentially, he said, I'm going to draw myself a preset circular grid because those lines are always going to repeat no matter what, okay? And that's how you got this guy right here. So when this is blank, you'll be able to draw all your triangles starting, like, for example, this starts in C. So instead of doing this sort of piecemeal stuff, it will already be there. Okay, you'll still have to do back and forth from your design, but at least you'll have these lines already drawn. And I can show you now how this would help, because just like this goes to C, B, X, C, because this is mirror, it's the opposite, right? Do you remember? So this is now X, B, and C. So it's a palindrome, like the CRISPR. You guys heard about CRISPR? The woman from Berkeley that won Doudna, that won the Nobel Prize for gene editing. And that baby stands for clustered, repeating, what's I? Intermittent, I think. It's not spelled like this. Palindromic sequence, something like that. No, I didn't get it right. CRISPR. Clustered, repeating, intermittent sequence, palindromic. I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, a palindrome when you read something back and forth. I should have rehearsed that better. Okay, so so this is the same. This part is the same as this part, right? So what I can do now, you'll see why the grid helps, because now I just have to repeat. I don't even have to go back to my other drawings, because I know that it repeats over here, right? I got there and now I have to go back, or I have to inverse the process. So because I already have it here, all I do is now I just bring these points over to the to these circles, which are called, so this would be my X circle, this would be my C circle, and this is my B circle, okay? And I just grab it and I bring it over until it hits. And by the way, you can be messy around these spots like that, but try not to touch that spot. So that's another X. Then I use the compass to really trace my steps. So that's B, and now I go from here. And yeah, so this is actually on the B circle. So right there. The last one, C, meaning the distance is the same, but it hits on the C circle. And this was B, okay? So there you go. That's now going to be my my pattern. And once I draw this pattern, you know, it's really then fabrication. I mean, it's a wait, where did I go? That's not right. I don't know what I connected there. It was actually here. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, this now becomes my master, my cookie cutter to make all the other pieces. And this is already in some other videos explained really well and shown really well. And in a way, I'm already showing you the next assignment, which is the inside of the cube, which would have been, I guess, part 4, but I think it's already there. So that's my pattern. That's my, it doesn't look right. I messed up something there. Right, because I didn't pick up. Yeah, you see what I did? That's the spot I need to, because it was connecting to C on the C circle. I marked it C, but it's on the X circle. So that's not good. It's good I caught it. But you know why I caught it? Because when I turned it and I look at it symmetrically, I saw that this was lower. Okay, so it was here. That was not good. It didn't look right. Looked off, this part. So instead, it's right there. Yep. Okay, almost done. And I'll just mention one more thing. Again, do this slower because it's very important to be. So this is my pattern. Now, that looks right because when I look at it symmetrically, it looks good. Now, you'll see that in this particular design, this is half and this is what I just did, and this is the other half except with the inverted mountains and valleys. But you'll see that if we leave it like that, this will actually be a joint in a really nice flat area, which is kind of not very pretty. So eventually what we'll do is this. We'll steal, let me just show you. We'll steal one of those triangles from one side. Okay, so we'll take this triangle and we'll move it over to this side. And I'm just going to quickly draw it like that, very lightly. But how do I do that? I need yet another piece. Not so easy. So basically this triangle, I'm going to steal it from that side and I'm going to bring it over. Okay, and then I'm going to delete that line. So this is what I call optimizing the fabrication later. Okay, so we would delete that. And this would be my pattern now that would allow me to build this still in 2 parts, but with the joints being in a valley or a mountain instead of being, you know, in the middle of the plain, right? With the rain in Spain. Okay, that's it. So essentially now the next part will be to, for you, if you can print the pattern, if you can print this pattern, which again is in 2 separate sheets, to then use that, redraw your cube there, and then basically, right, you would do this then by using a push pin and pushing. Okay. All right. So that was the inside of the cube. This guy right here. So I'll see you, well, actually part 4 may be already done. So watch for that inside of the cube video using once again the video that's up there now. It's using this pattern, but if you don't have this, you would have to definitely draw what we just drew, right? The extra credit drawing. All right, see you next time.